Yeah, so I'm Fraser Ayres, and I had the joy of playing Darren many, many moons ago, and then Ben, Recall's son, later on as a series regular. So when that happened, when I was Darren, I think I was about 18, 18, 17, 18, 19, something like that. And it was the first year I'd done TV. I'd had the joy of doing theatre before that, and I'd done a movie called Speak Like a Child with the incredible John O'Comfort. But that year was my first year of TV jobs, and it was the bill, and I got London's Burning. And I was over the moon. So me and my mum used to obviously watch London's Burning like religiously all the way through the 80s. And when I got that job, it's look, Ma, I've made it. Look, I'm actually on a thing we watch. And it was an absolute joy, that job was. It really, really was. And they were so good to me. And it being one of my very first jobs, it was, God, my mind was blown. My mind was absolutely blown. It was the first time, I'd been, like I said, I'd been on movie sets, but they're kind of different. TV sets, when you're part of that ongoing beast that happens, they're like families. They're like, people spend a lot of time together and they create those kind of worlds. And it felt like a real honor to be asked into that. And, London's Burning. I mean, wow. You didn't really get a better show back then. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, well, so that was a few years after that. So I'd got that first one through my agent. I was a young actor, agent that got me Darren and whatnot. And then a few years later, again, the audition kind of came up for it, and I thought to myself, "Oh, I'm never getting this. There's no way they're going to have me as that guy, and then have me in as Recall's son." And previously, when as that character was growing up, it was another actor as well. So I was like, oh yeah, I feel like I'm really chancing my arm there. And then it came about. The agent called up and was like, you're going to be in London's Burning regularly. And so at the time, so I'm from Leicester, Midlands boy originally. And being able to spend that much time down in London and be in that kind of environment, it was all very new to me living in London at that time. And so that was like the perfect start to that, and again, kind of getting up every day, going to set, being with the boys and girls of London's Burning. It was an absolute joy, mate. It really, really, really was. And it taught me a lot. It taught me a real, real lot. Like I say, I had done other bits and pieces of TV by then, but when you're in those machines, if you like the Bill or EastEnders, they're completely different, beautiful beasts. They're very quick. They're usually completely underfunded, and they're like I say, they're families. And having that experience, day in, day out with everyone, and the incredible actors on it, getting that kind of, I was really interested because the guy who played Recall, for your fans, lovely guy, absolutely lovely guy. And he really took me under his wing, really, really did, and showed me the ropes of how sets, stand a little bit more to the left, mate, you'll get a better shot. And, don't do all your shots like this, he really took me under his wing with that. And so, after I'd done, yeah, I think it was only 1 year, 2 years maybe. But once I'd done that, I knew so much more about the industry off the back of that. I really, really did. It was great. So, so let's talk about Darren, right? So we did Darren. Bearing in mind, like I said, I'm 17, 18, 19, never done, on a TV set before. Oh my God, I'm going to be in London's Burning. And that was the time, a bit like the Casualty format, where it was kind of like, oh, what's going to happen? Oh, there's the accident. And then, the episode would be around that. And Darren, he was basically a young lad who was working on a construction site, and he'd fallen into a pea shingle. Now, for your viewers who don't know what that is, a pea shingle is just like a massive funnel, but it's real. And it's got all those tiny, tiny little stones in, and it all comes down to a point, and then, the bits come out the bottom. So Darren, poor sod, had fallen into one of these, and that was the episode. But, you know, we're talking about, when was it? 98, 99, something like that. And well, health and safety was a different thing back then. So what they actually did was they took me to a construction site and stuck me in a pea shingle. And so I was really just, oh, don't worry, we won't let you slip down too far. We'll catch you if it gets too much. And they replaced it with, like, not stones, but like lighter stones. But when it was all compounded, you were just in the pea shingle. So actually, there wasn't a lot of acting done. I was actually suffocating and on the day. And it was so much fun. And you know, you kind of on a set as a young man in this what feels like a big environment. Cameras are everywhere. You know, you're being dropped into bits of set, and I mean, so exciting. And then when I was doing Ben, I was kind of stuck in the pub a little bit because of what they did with the character. Was, you know, he was kind of working his way up to become a fireman and following his dad's footsteps. So it was slightly less glamorous, but again, no less fun. The people that, you know, people think about what you see on TV, like, you know, like the scene and what happens. But that one little scene, that one little 30 seconds takes 4 hours to film. And in between that 4 hours, people are drinking tea and sitting around and having jokes. And so actually, you know, the locations are really, really great and fun. But actually, it's the offset, it's behind the set where the most fun really, really happens. And you're having all those laughs and jokes and sharing book reads and all that kind of thing. And like I say, London's Burning. I've done a lot of work since. And I can hand on heart say there are very few places that have been ever as warm, welcoming, family orientated. You know, I don't know what the other actors that you've interviewed have said, but hopefully they will agree with that. It really was a real family environment, really was. We were in, where were we? In East London. Oh, I think we were in Three Mills, the studio there actually. And I would visit to the station. There was a few scenes where, you know, I'd go and visit my dad, recall, and it was when Ben began his journey to train to be a fireman. There was that, but literally most of my time wasn't at the fire station. Really, it was kind of, you know, in the pub and on locations doing those things. So no, I never got to like whiz down a pole, unfortunately. Meanies. So it's funny. So, you know, as you know, brown, and back in the 80s when you're watching this, there were no black people on TV, mate. Like, you had Lenny Henry and that was it. Certainly no people with a kind of beige hue like myself. Do you know what I mean? And a big part of watching London's Burning was that representation, and seeing, you know, Ben do such an incredible job as Recall and be so loved by the nation. You know, it's, people kind of forget. It was a little bit like where we are now. There was a lot of racism around, a lot of racism. And, you know, even as a child, I experienced some pretty, you know, awful things. And so to see yourself reflected in like a primetime show, ITV, you know, that kind of thing, it was actually a huge deal. So being a fan of the show, I was a massive fan of Recall anyway, like huge, huge, huge. And then I actually almost blew my audition because I got so overexcited at the idea of getting to play Recall's son. Like, I got way overexcited. And again, when you kind of, they say never meet your heroes, don't they? Because when you meet them, they'll just shatter you. And that's the beautiful thing. He was an absolute gem from day one to the end. And like I say, he really took me under his wing. And so I really felt part of this kind of, this story, this kind of British story, you know, that these British shows have a responsibility, like EastEnders, you know, and London's Burning and Casualty, they have a responsibility, really. And I really felt like I'd been taken into that. And it was really great because he understood that role that he was playing as an actor, not just as Recall, that he was being seen, and there was a responsibility to kind of nail it, really. You know, he had to be like 5 times better than everybody else because, you know, he was the only black guy in it at that point. And he kind of, there was such a warmth with him, such a kindness and warmth. And when we weren't, it was great. So what we would do is we would rehearse the scenes and we'd really get into the script, like batter it, so that when the camera was rolling, we weren't doing 5 takes. No matter how nervous I was as a young actor or, fumbling, that was all done. And it was him that took me through those processes to be able to do that. So we were either really working hard on the script or laughing our socks off, absolutely laughing our socks off. And it kind of happened like that. And being a part of that story with him, and that kind of representation on screen, particularly at that time, yeah, it felt really, really quite special, to be honest. It's still to this day, it feels like a real honor and a blessing to have got to do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did. He did. And it was interesting how they, we never got to finish those stories as well, which was a shame. But yeah, that crossover of, I remember, if I recall correctly, you had kind of Ben, in the pub, a little bit aimless, not knowing what he wants to do, but obviously, and there was that to and fro with, kind of the dad and what his dad wanted for him. And I remember, I think the last scene we filmed was the moment where Ben gets accepted, and it's in a car, I seem to remember, and it's Recall and Ben, and it's that moment where it's going to happen. And I think Recall's dropping him off at the train. But it's the final moment where that happens. And then obviously after that moment, there's that. And so it would have been great to have seen what happened to Ben, how that kind of span him into, did he become the best firefighter or the worst from that situation? Do you know what I mean? But I think there was one more series after that. And I think Ben then got played by Alexis Rodney, I think. Then played him when the show got bought up by the Americans. I think that's what happened. Like I say, what was it? 25 years ago. It was a while ago. My brain is very hazy. But there were great stories to tell. They were about legacy and about fathers and about sons. And I think that was the great thing about London's Burning, that it achieved in a way that a lot of other shows didn't, particularly those kind of episodic ones, which was they were never afraid to tackle really big subjects. And at the same heart of it, you kind of had that kind of ITV heartland to it as well as those big subjects, Yeah, a lot of fun. Like I say, Alexis Rodney, I think, played Ben after me. And Alexis is still, to this day, one of my very, very close friends. And, his journey's gone, I think currently he's in LA at the moment doing bits and pieces. Lovely guy, absolutely lovely guy. But it was quite interesting because it wasn't just the other bands that you get to know, but like, there was contacts made with the other actors as well around that as well. But yes, so I knew him. I didn't know the previous Ben actually, but I knew the one after me. No, we didn't. Like I say, it's the 90s. I didn't even have training to get in the peace shingle as Darren, mate, let alone firefighting. No, I didn't actually have any because, again, where I filmed up to the story, kind of it was just about to happen. So I didn't get it. I didn't get to swizz around any poles or do anything. But I know the other firefighters, they had mad training. I know that for a fact, because they would take them to literally where they trained up in London and spin them through it as actors. I know that did happen, but I didn't have the joy, unfortunately. We just get to see the little box on telly and we see all that bit and we see what's in that frame. And again, it's an army of people behind it. I'm now a writer and I'm also, I make TV shows for ITV and for different shows myself now. So I'm on the other side of it. And you realize there's a whole army of people behind that. And again, wardrobe, makeup, incredible departments, and again, very serious about what they did, but then lots of fun. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, everything was absolutely authentic. And, you know, if they're, you know, filming had been stopped because there was a tear in the uniform and the costume were not having it. Do you know what I mean? Like, no, it's not supposed to be teared yet. Let's do that. And again, in those, you know, the other departments behind the camera. So, for instance, like your stunts, mate, like they were an incredible team who would come in. And I think what really happened with London's Burning is you had a lot of people, not only part of something that was quite, you know, iconic and important for British TV, but you had a lot of people who were very dedicated and serious. And so there was a lot of fun to be had with it. And so, like, even with all the stunts, like that was a thing. And funny enough, you know, working on BBC shows, like, you know, there's a big thing around the actual stunt and how that operates and the team who puts that together. And although it's, you know, it's recently, you know, looks like it's closed its doors, but who knows what will happen. But Holby, the makeup team on Holby City, like they go all out on the prosthetics. Like that's part of the fun that they have, is really getting underneath that and seeing what they can do and pushing those boundaries. And on London's Burning, you had that with the stunts. You know, obviously sometimes it involved putting a child in a pea shingle machine, but they really pushed the boundaries of what was achievable back then and how things could be filmed and how good it looked. And, you know, obviously, you know, it was back in 4:3 and that, but I'd be quite interested in seeing some of those stunts and some of those accidents that they did, because I've got a feeling they probably really hold up even to today. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what? And it's because it's the pea shingle one, mate. That first impact, being you know, like I say, 17, 18, and being in that environment, like that storyline, like, and it was like the one I was in one rather than the regular. But that storyline was probably my favorite because I was in it. I got to see myself. It was one of the first time me and my mum, you know, I grew up on an estate in Leicester, just raised by my mum. So again, as sat in a kind of Beaumont Leys looking at the TV going, like that impact, do you know what I mean? It's a very selfish impact, but I would say that my favorite storyline is Darren's in the pea shingle. Any other memories? 20, my brain hasn't thought about this in such a long time. It was really interesting getting your email and, you know, kind of going through it and thinking about it. And you know what? There's lots and lots of little stories and little moments. But I think what it is rather than individual stories and moments, again, it's kind of harkening back to that thing that I was saying, like, you know, you get there and we'd all have breakfast together. So there'd be all that. And then you get in costume and makeup, and then, you know, we'd all be chatting away doing that. And people would be, you know, oh, have you read this book? Or did you see that on TV? Or do you know what I'm thinking of? You know, and there was a couple of actors who, like, in that early days, like, it's so common now. But even back then, there was some of the actors in London's Burning who were like, I'm thinking about doing LA. And so you had this world, and then you'd go onto the set and everyone would have fun and do that. And then you'd eat together. And so there's lots of stories and people falling off of things, and, you know, things being on fire that weren't meant to be on fire. Fire's not going out, you know, it's not going out, that kind of thing. But actually, I think for me, the warmest, the best story is actually the whole thing itself. Everybody from directors to the actors to the people behind the camera. It was such a wonderful environment. And like I say, I've done a lot, you know, still do a lot now. And as an executive producer now, and I'm making TV shows on that side, I've realized that actually all I'm doing is trying to recreate that environment and that safe space and that warmth and that family feeling that I had on London's Burning. All my days, I've never clocked that. But that's what I'm doing. And so actually our sets are very fun, and, you know, the work's getting done, but my mum always had this thing that if you enjoy what you do, then you'll never work a day in your life, that old thing, you know? And actually, that's what I do now. And looking back, it's from London's Burning. It's that real family. And what happens, it's very interesting when you're an actor because you're at the bottom of the pile. Like, audience see you as the top of the pile because that you're the person they see. But actually on set, you're last to get paid, last to get fed. That's not true, actually. First to get fed, but last to get paid. You know, you're at the bottom. There's directors and writers, and you know, stunts are more important than you on that kind of set. But we get that illusion that actors are important, but actually you're at the bottom of the pile. And on London's Burning, no one was at the bottom of the pile. On London's Burning, everybody was very much, you know, or had the illusion of being an equal and part of a family. And I'll never forget that, brother. Never forget that. Kenny. Yeah, Dead Canny. Dead Canny's really interesting. Yeah, yeah. So Dead Canny is a show. So like I say, I exec produce and make shows now. And I also have a bit of a thing about diversity and inclusion in our industry, you know, making sure that everybody who's not like the posh bloke at the top is getting jobs. Do you know what I mean? Don't matter what color they are, where they come from. If you're not that posh bloke, you probably need a leg up. Do you know what I mean? So we do a lot of work in that, you know, making sure that, you know, working class people, women are getting seen, black people, everybody who's not that bloke, basically. And so we were working with a UK TV on a pathway. And if you're not that bloke, it tends to be really difficult to get into the industry. And so, for instance, see your own written show on TV, lots and lots of difficulty and obstacles around that. So I set up a pathway with UK TV where basically it's from bedroom to broadcast. And we took these brand new writers, gave them all the experience they need, and then we actually made the shows. And they're going to be on Dave in June. And that one that we took on as a production company through this process was called Dead Canny, set in the Northeast, and it's about a young psychic who can see dead people. Unfortunately, what she kind of comes to realize is that the dead are basically the same assholes they were when they were alive. And so that's the comedy of that. And because I am also a tight-butted executive, I couldn't afford another actor, so I dropped myself in it and then just didn't give myself any lines, like cut all these lines, give them to the other actress. So that'll be out in June. And there's also another little project that'll be out this summer on the acting front that I'll be doing, but I'm not allowed to say what it is at the moment. But let's just say there's some geek stuff attached to it. So that'll be coming out in the summer. But now, you know, mainly I'm a writer, you know, I write for, like, In the Long Run, for Idris Elba, and written for EastEnders and different shows like that. And I'm what's known as a showrunner. So in this country, there's not too many of us, but they're kind of the people who come up with the concept, make the concept, do it. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit like the Dennis Waterman joke on, you know, do the theme tune, write the theme tune. Like, it's a bit like that joke, and that's what a showrunner is. And I'm very fortunate to be one of those in our country now, where I'm on the other side of the desk making the work, and you know, I'm finding the young Bens and making the shows like London's Burning and getting to be on that side, and you know, hopefully create environments where people get to have a lot of fun. Mate, absolute pleasure, man. Thank you for keeping the spirit of London's Burning alive, mate. You know, it really was an iconic show, and I think of the impact it had on me, not just being in it, but as a viewer. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of your audience who had that impact of it as well. You know, I do kind of always think to myself, like, that could do with a reboot, mate. It's one of those concepts that, you know, in the modern firefighting, you know, when you look at how our firefighters are treated now, and it's not really heard about. I'm sure your interest in London's Burning extends into real firefighting. And interestingly, I did a play at the Royal Court with a wonderful director, actor, writer called Clint Dyer. And it was about a group of firefighters and what that meant to be a firefighter now. And we spoke to some firefighters, and they really don't have it very easy, and they really don't have the support that they deserve or have earned. And I think that's probably indicative of our country a little bit. You know, we don't look after doctors, we don't look after the police, we don't look after the, you know, the people on the front line. They all should be paid the most, really, and looked after the best. You know what I mean? Because they're looking after us the most. And, you know, when you need a firefighter, you really need one. And when you need a doctor, you really need one. So, you know, same with teachers, and, you know, another conversation, brother. But I think there's definitely a world where that kind of, you know, London's burning, and seeing what it's really like for them now amongst this and what they have to contend with, you know, and not just, you know, the accidents and the fires and the stunts, but, you know, the behind the politics, the funding, the this, the that, the racism, the whatever those things may be. And I think there's a really interesting show that could definitely be made, you know, in the modern day, to kind of honor it a little bit. But, you know, just pipe dreams, just pipe dreams.